So 126 of the Hoop Threads podcast here with Coach Glenn Farello at Paul the Six. How we feeling, Coach?
Doing great. Good to be here with you.
It's fun not having a coach against you now, and we can we can kind of talk a little differently about stuff.
Sure.
Had definitely had some fun battles, man. So let's take it back to the beginning though. Talk about your beginnings with the game of basketball. How did you develop your passion for the game? Because you're definitely a hoops junkie.
Yeah. No, of course, played it growing up. My father was a coach. He was a football coach and a basketball coach, and he was an assistant coach for at the time the winningest coach in Ohio history. The defensive principles, the defensive mindset certainly came from my father a long, long time ago. I was a point guard. I always tell my players now I look like a point forward, but I was a point guard. So my only chance to be successful on the court was to hopefully have a high basketball IQ and help kind of lead my team in that way. And so I was able to kind of establish with my coach in high school, Tim Essig. He gave me a lot of freedom to be that floor general, and that gave me a lot of confidence for sure. And allowed me to kind of expand on what I was doing. And my father, he was always great with just he would never give me a whole lot of feedback until I answered all the questions when I was complaining about something. So I kind of go and have something to say, and he just look at me and say, "So what are you going to do about it?" And
Mm.
I thought that was great. I've actually shared that with some parents now because I had to have a solution before I was allowed to, get into anything, and allowed me to think the game through. And then he'd lead me into some examples of some solutions and how to correct some things. And I thought that was really, really important for me early on as a coach. Played a little bit of a Division III basketball at Grove City College. Not much. I actually had an ankle injury. I had ankle reconstruction after my freshman year, and then was fortunate enough to play a year overseas. And when I went overseas, I went over to Wales and Cardiff and played for a club team over there, and got a chance to be a player coach for the University of Cardiff, University of Wales um, club team, and that was a great experience. I met the director of basketball in Wales, a guy by the name of Frank Daw, and Frank took me on and had me play on a couple different teams. His team that traveled all over Wales and England, and then the club team, as I mentioned, and so yeah, I do a lot of coaching clinics. I traveled all over the country with them, and that kind of gave me like, man, this is something I really want to carry forward. And then when I came back and finished up, I moved to DC. My brother lived here, and I thought maybe it'd be a great place to start my life. And I worked for the Department of Commerce, the Bureau of Economic Analysis. Graduated with an accounting degree from Grove City, and answered an ad in the papers. Said looking for a volunteer assistant coaches at Eleanor Roosevelt, and Mark Hurt met with him multiple times and got a chance to sit down with him and join his staff, and that's kind of where it all started. I was an assistant for 5 years. And started running the summer league program, which I got a chance to coach for a lot of years. He gave me complete freedom to coach the summer. Back then, in public school, you weren't allowed to coach during the summer, so you had to have someone completely separate. But he also just allowed me to run the practices, run all the summer things, and that gave me a lot of experience at the ages, 24, 25, 26. So I became head coach at the age of 27, and was able to hit the ground running with some great players right away. I just happened to have in the building Delonte Holland, Eddie Baz, and Delonte West, and we were able to kind of get things rolling pretty quickly, and kind of took off from there.
Man, 30 years of basketball in like 2 minutes there, coach. You well done. So like self-scout for a second, what kind of player were you and how does that affect your coaching philosophy and style?
Yeah, so I was a pass first point guard. I really enjoyed just running the show and getting after it that way for my teammates. So I took a lot of pride in that, and I think that's kind of carried over in how it is that we share the ball, and then how our point guards have always kind of push the ball, get out in transition. And I think that was really it's really important to me. I think the point guard can be the engine, and if we can go ahead and get that point guard role solidified and understanding how they can get everyone else better and make their teammates better. And that's what we've had over all these years. And then also understanding and appreciating everybody, right? Like just being great teammates. I had some great teammates that I got a chance to play with, and we were a very tight, connected unit. And that kind of made me think going forward, like that's the way that you have to go. Like you have to have connection. You have to really. We all understand that. We all know that, but that was something that was a driving force for me. I wasn't that talented. I tell my players all the time, I'm not sure I could have played for me. But the amount of talent that we've had, obviously out here in the DMV, is the best in the country. But that was kind of like laid the foundation for me for sure of the mindset that we have as a basketball program, how the guys can share the ball with each other and they can all lift each other up.
You talked about it a second ago, but you became a head coach at the age of 27. You're a confident guy. Talk about your kind of coaching low point. Did you ever have a moment where you questioned like if this is your path, and like how did you navigate through that?
Not sure if I ever questioned whether it was my path. I always wanted to do it. Um, Again, in my DNA from my father. Wasn't sure if I was ever going to be able to kind of execute it, to be honest with you, just because, I didn't work in the building. I wasn't a teacher. And so when I became a head coach, I was working at MCI at the time in the finance department. Was an accountant for 20 years, did that for multiple telecom companies. And so being able to have the combination of being able to have a workplace that encouraged it and allowed me to leave early when I needed to and to have that ability was really important. I had some great people that supported me in those companies, whether it be MCI or British Telecom. And it's Tata Communications was the last place I was that allowed me to have that before I came into the school full time, which is now back in 2013. So I've been here for a while now, but I thought that was really important. So I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to sustain it, right? I wasn't sure I
Mm.
was able to do it with my career and be able to do both. I thought that was important. From a basketball standpoint, I thought losing in the state championship game in 2001 was disappointing because we had such a great year, and we were really moving. Had just a great team, one of the best teams I've ever had, and was very disappointed when we lost. Magruder got us in the state championship game, and Dan Harwood, great coach, and it was just a disappointment. And we had built up right when I first got to Roosevelt. We were excited about like, hey, we're going to build into something here. We're gonna go try to hang some banners, and so that was disappointing. The following year, we struggled all year. We went 10-12 during the regular season, and so that's years 3 and 4 in that range. And so again, disappointed that did we miss our shot? Is this going to go? Where's this going to go now?
Mm.
Am I going to continue to sustain this as far as my profession, my career? And is it worth it all? Right? Like those long days, long hours. And then we ended up winning a state championship in 2002, and we went on an amazing run, and I thought that was a catalyst for me to have that belief. We never gave up. We kept grinding. We never gave into it. But there were sure some moments that in that time period that I was wondering, well, hey, is this really the way I want to spend the rest of my life? So I thought that end of that year and the way we kind of stuck together and found a way kind of propelled into the belief that you can do anything with anything. Just with what you got, and we're going to compete. We're going to find a way to compete. We're going to find a way to challenge, and I think that's carried over ever since.
What were some of the like, you went to the regional finals, I think it was like 11 or 12 years straight. Like you said, you won a state championship in 01, 02, lost to the buzzer in 06. What were some of the keys to getting that program rolling? And what were some of the staff's non-negotiables or kind of like the pillars of your culture at ER?
Yeah, I thought it was really important that well, first off, a lot of times back then it was as simple as grades, right? GPAs and establishing a monitoring system, make sure guys were like living up to being student athletes. Eleanor Roosevelt was a fantastic school. Dr. Borman was the principal that hired me, and I thought Eleanor Roosevelt was as good as a public school you could possibly find. To give the academic backing for the kids, that support, and then to find a way to make sure that the athletics was very successful. So with that, I thought we established early on that, hey guys, we are going to be like on the court, off the court. We're going to be a program. We're going to conduct ourselves at a very high level. And so we did. We went a lot. We did a lot of trips together. We went to camps together. We formed those bonds, and I thought that was really important in our development of just that mindset of the toughness, the defense, the attacking, the playing fast. and that carried over for sure. Billy Lanier was I started my career as a JV assistant my very first year as his assistant at Roosevelt, and he moved on to Oxon Hill. And so they have some great teams with Michael Sweetney, Lamar Butler, who I ended up coaching for me here, is now at Mason, and so many wonderful players. And so I had a chance to see how Billy operated, and I was very similar in mindset. So we had some great battles in the regional finals every year, and I think that was that tenaciousness, that tenacity that we had, relentlessness that we had at Roosevelt with our defense, with our pressure, with running and jumping and full court pressing and then getting our running game going, but also be able to kind of handle a 55-53 game where we're going to have to get into just half court situations. So I thought that ability for that group to kind of like lean into it and not just run around out there and just be athletic really helped. And then at that point too, it was really important to me that we get kids to college, right? Because not a whole lot of kids out of PG public schools were getting college scholarships or the attention that we all thought they deserved.
Hmm.
Keith Cottrell, who was at Laurel, Steve Matthews at Wynn Park, a couple other guys that we all kind of came together and put together an AAU team called PG Select, and that was really important to us to get our guys more exposure. Taking them to Hoop Group, which is back in the day was Eastern Invitational basketball camp. Our program was the first one to go up there to New Jersey, and we took our whole squad up there and to give them exposure, and from that carried on a lot of the other teams from PG. The amount of talent that we had in PG public schools back in that day, it was amazing, and so it was really important to all of us is that we get our kids eligible academically, that they were getting the proper exposure, that you didn't have to go to a private school to get that kind of exposure and opportunities to go to college, and it flourished from there. And that was a really important piece to it. And then once our kids and our community saw our kids going to college, I thought that helped our reputation and helped us build into what we did at Roosevelt.
I was talking to one of your former players about, probably your best player, as far as professionally speaking. He said you took a lot of developmental projects early in your coaching career, kind of seeking kids that just played hard and were coachable. He's like, those were the two things that he needed. Um, Talk about how you kind of discovered an NBA player by accident on an outdoor court at Roosevelt.
Yeah, I know you're talking about Delonte West. So, and of course, we're all praying for Delonte. He's been through some tough times. A lot of people have seen some of those things. And please, when you see that type of stuff, obviously just pray for him and his family. But Delonte, yeah, back then I had just gotten a job. I had the kids out on the track and we were running, and there's an outdoor court near Roosevelt. And, the kind of stereotypical, like no net, bent rim, and see this little lefty just knocking down shots by himself and misses one, goes up and dunks. And I say, hey, guys, keep on running. Like, I'll be right back. So I walked over to him. I introduced myself. I asked him who he was. Delonte said, "Do you go to school here?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah." I said, "I don't remember you from before. What year are you? You're a sophomore. Don't remember you as a freshman. I lived with my dad down in Virginia." I was like, "Okay, could you gonna try out? You gonna play?" He's like, "Nah." Well, how about tomorrow? You just come on over with us and spend some time with us. And the next day he came to the workout, and he was just had all the seniors or juniors and seniors on one court. The freshmen and sophomores were on another court, and this little sophomore's out there just being aggressive and tough. And I called him over and I said, "Hey, Delonte," I said, "Like, how are your grades?" Like, and he's like, "I hadn't been in school for a minute." Like, he was out, so his grades weren't where they needed to be. I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, you bring a progress report to me once a week, and I'll bring you on for the second part of the year." And sure enough, every week this little sophomore didn't say a whole lot, would bring me a progress report, and he ended up making it. And I think it gave him a reason, a reason to be successful in the classroom. And so I brought him on, and he played JV for a game or two, and I moved him up to varsity. And I'll never forget this. We're at Laurel. We don't play well. We lose. We're in the locker room afterwards, and he played well. It was his first game. He played about 15 minutes. I'll always remember because I've been telling this story ever since. He had 6 points. He had 4 rebounds, a couple steals, and so pretty solid performance for first time. And I'm going after the guys. I was really upset with how they played, and he raises his hand. And I'm like, oh man, like I'm thinking to myself, like what's this kid doing? So I said, yeah, Delonte, we got something to say. And he stands up, looks at all his teammates, and said, Coach, I want to apologize and to you and all my teammates. I didn't feel as if I played up to my capabilities tonight. I promise it'll never happen again. And in that moment, I was just like, oh man, wow, do we have a kid that's just wired the right way as a competitor? And he just took it off. He just took off from there. And so yeah, I was really proud of how he developed and how he worked himself into being a great player, and moving on to St. Joe's and all the work he did up there too. So and of course getting to the NBA, which was a dream. But he that was an amazing journey to watch him develop. Eddie Bazin as well, who was the same class. Eddie went from being ineligible his freshman year to being one of the best players in the country, and of course went on to Charlotte. Just actually got into the Hall of Fame at Charlotte. Played a long time professionally. So those two guys were two kids that were just motivated. They loved the game. They loved to compete. They defended. They did whatever was asked, to win the game. And that's so even having those types of players that very early on with that mindset, it just showed me and all the future players I ever have. Like, you can be a great teammate. You do not have to like just decide I'm just going to jack the ball. I'm just going to be a scorer. Like you can be everything
Mm.
and do everything and not feel like, oh, well, I'm a star. I don't have to do these things. These things are underneath me. All the dirty work. They did all the dirty work, and they were proud to do it, and they were tough to do it. And then, of course, they also still shined on the offensive side too, so you can do both. So if you look at someone like Smitty right now, right, who is lauded for what he does on both ends of the floor, I got a chance to see guys do that early on and saying that I can see kids doing this. Like you don't have to sacrifice one for the other. You don't have to be labeled one or the other. You can do both and be both at all times.
That's it touches on something I was gonna, touch on later in this interview, but I'm just gonna ask it now. My personal philosophy as like a scout is that competitive players are the ones that get better. Like the basketball psychos are the ones that seem to have the largest developmental leaps. And like I kind of like I put all my chips on those guys because I just feel like they're going to figure out. The nurture piece of it kind of matters too. Were their parents athletes? Do their parents challenge or coddle them? Do the elite student athletes think on their own or have the parents call the shots? Outside of the obvious, he's got a tall mom. What has your staff learned are some of the markers or predictors of a good player long term?
Yeah, so it's funny. One simple thing I always think about in this situation is like, what kind of teammates are they? How are they engaged with their teammates and their teammates' success? Those that are excited about their teammates' success are very confident. You can tell that they get it's bigger. They're part of something bigger than themselves, but they have a chance to make it because as you get more evolved in this game, like you're going to have to be connected with everybody else around you, and so seeing other people have success shows maturity, shows confidence that you don't need to have the attention all yourself all the time. So that kind of being outward instead of inward, and I kind of watch that for every player. How outward are they with recognizing other players, or how about this? How about even just deferring to the older players with respect, not out of like, hey, I'm going to take a back seat to anybody because I'm very talented. We have the saying, why wait to be great? So if you can do it, we want you to do it. We want to have that confidence, but I want you to kind of push through but also have that respect for the older guys that have been around. So seeing that, how watching someone be a camp counselor at a camp, how does they talk to 10-year-olds? How much do they care about, giving back and giving back to the sport? Those are simple markers for us to be able to watch and see like, okay, well, how wired is this kid as far as understanding the bigger picture of what's around him, let alone what the competitiveness is like on the court. So someone like Deshaun Harris Smith, we all know how competitive he is, but we also watched him off the court. I got a chance to see how it is he interacted with his teammates and how he got them better and encouraged the younger ones. We've always had this kind of tradition, even just over the last few years, like an Aaron Thompson, Brandon Slater, handing off to like Ant Harris and Jeremy Roach, and then Trevor Keels, and then from Trevor you have Doug and Deshaun, and if you would actually use Ben as an example right now, but that whole group from last year, how great they were, and all the ones that I just mentioned, talking about the guys that came before them and how influential they were in their development. So, the willingness to kind of take that in, right? So again, you can become a pro. Are you willing to listen as a rookie to the guys in the NBA? Are you willing to be like, hey, do you have that kind of humility? So listening to them and also then giving back to the younger ones.
Mm.
So I think that's a big piece of what we watch. We can kind of see like, oh, these guys are wired the right way as far as understanding how they fit into the world of basketball. That blend of confidence and humility, for sure. Activity level, going back to just on the court, the activity level, right? If it's got to be natural, it's got to be wanted. It's got to be something it matters to me that I'm going to be intentional even when I'm not natural, when I say that, like someone like Isaiah Abraham, he wasn't a natural defender. Now he's made himself into one of the best defensive players in the country by the time he left us. And he made it very intentional. He recognized this is a path for me. So maybe it wasn't so natural for him as far as like that's just his mindset because he was a great scorer. Like that's what the best thing he did. Darren
Mhm.
Harris is another one. But they added those other elements. They had to be intentional with it for a while, and then they actually got the habits formed, and then they were able to kind of blossom.
That
So
was one of the keys too. Sorry to cut you off, but Isaiah Abraham really buying in the defensive end of the floor, not just to be a competent defender, but to be a next level defender. That's I don't know whether or not you discussed it with your team, but I get a lot of shit from some of the PVI parents I know about having you guys too behind Gonzaga. And that was my biggest question mark is like who's gonna step up, with Big Pat being out and Isaiah just taking on that defensive like just role. And, Darren stepped up. I thought Ben had an incredible year.
yeah,
Um, and obviously, like, I think that the funny thing too, we were talking about competitors. I mean, you've had outward competitors like Deshaun. I tell people this all the time. The first game I remember seeing him play his freshman year was at Hoop Fest when he checked into the game against IMG, and the first play he tried to dunk on Mark. The first play into the game. And I think it's interesting finding different like types of competitors because Darren's not one to talk all that much. But what he does is funny. If you
it
like,
is. It is. It is.
he'll do the yeah, like that's cash or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's a different type of fire, and so that's interesting to me. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, no, and but I think that's kind of like so going back to something like Isaiah. So go back to he's an unbelievable teammate. He cares deeply about his teammates, right? So he doesn't want to let them down, right? Became very aware of what he could be, what he was capable of. He had a competitive fire in him, and his activity level just hadn't matched it yet. So he had it in him, and he brought it out, and he saw it. He saw the opportunity to improve and help his team in the ways that he could, and then he just kind of took it from there and ran with it. So I think I think that's why I think we kind of just try to find the kids that, a lot of times what we do even here is, we ask the kids know who can play a certain way and buy into like, hey, we don't have a star cast system here. Never have. We've had some players that have been very talented, obviously, but they've always been guys that have been willing to share the limelight and the spotlight with others. And I think that's been so as we identify the right kind of kids and the right kind of mentality, the kids a lot of times can tell us and say, hey, this guy's going to fit in great with us, or hey, coach, no, I'm not sure he'll ever understand like play PVI basketball. And of course, I think it's great that people understand what PVI basketball means. So it means a lot to our guys, and our culture means a lot to them. So again, buying into that culture, a big deal. And so as you evaluate, as you see different players, I think that's one thing that is often overlooked, not by you. I think you do a fantastic job. I appreciate how thorough you are with your evaluations, because it's not just about the talent level on the floor and what they're showing. It's like, hey, do they have some of those intangibles? And you can't really tell unless you watch a kid multiple times until you get a chance to really get a feel for what his game's all about, what he's trying to get accomplished, and then kind of read that and see that. And I think that's one of the things that our guys have been successful, even moving on. They've been successful because they know how to play with other great players. And so having that mindset is huge. And we build into it for sure, but it's something that I think the kids have to like absorb and want. And they do. We don't. We're not. I don't. We don't fight our guys. Does that make sense? We're not fighting them with, hey, you got to play this way, or you got to share the ball, or this is the rotation you need to make, or you made this mistake. They're coachable. They want to get better, and that's such a big part of this game.
So it's interesting what you mentioned again about Isaiah. Again, I was going to touch on this later, but some of the most talented players are kind of if guys. Like if the jumper starts to fall, if the motor picks up, what have you learned about the when and the why of that switch flipping and like where they start to work harder, don't take plays off, become more coachable, become more accountable, become a better teammate, like you said. Like, what have you learned are some of the ways that you can nudge that process to happening a bit quicker than it's.
Yeah, I think we often talk a lot about college, right? Like as soon as you come to my program, we're already talking about college and that what that level is all about and what you're trying to get to. Oh, it's gonna have a joke. Everyone's goals and dreams. I want to know what they are when you get to here to PVI, and typically what we want to hear is that they want to play college basketball, right? To become a student athlete, get a chance to have a college scholarship is one of the most rewarding things you can do. It's very difficult to do. Helps your family so much. It helps you in your path in life to be able to go to college and get a college degree. Like this is where it all starts, right? So that conversation. And then we always joke is like, no one's golden dream should be to play at PVI or play for Glenn Farello because that's too short sighted. That's not enough, right? We're here to help you get to that level. And so we talk about college all the time. We talk about what it takes to be successful at that level. We use examples all the time. We're sitting in, film study, and we'll bring up film on Houston and how they rebound, right? And listen to Kelvin Sampson talk about it. Like it's really important. We've often played very similar to Jay Wright in his flow and his system from all these years. And so the Villanova jump stop is now a known thing. We've been calling it the Villanova jump stop since like I was at Roosevelt back in the 2000s. It's because of just the way they play. So we'll show that. We'll actually talk about that, how important it is to have that ability to play at the next level. So we're constantly talking about that. When you constantly talk about that, the kids are going to buy into like, how am I going to get someone to be more active? How am I going to get someone to compete better? This is what college coaches are looking for. This is what you're going to need to do to be on the floor with us at PVI. And then of course, the accountability to the teammate. The kids do have a great connection and relationship with each other. So they don't want to let each other down. And we've all played this game, and yes, there's a connection to our coaches. We want to have that as the adults that are helping to kind of guide. But when the players, demand of each other, when they hold each other accountable, when they want to be great for each other, right? When they play for each other, we always talk about playing for each other, fighting for each other, and we compete with each other, not against each other. So everyone's, looking for more playing time, more opportunity, but everyone gets a chance to eat, and everyone has a chance to be successful because of the way we play. If you all just buy in, and we can all rise up together, and they buy into it, they see that, and that's why it's so important for your better players to then bring everyone along with them, encourage them, and not just try to stand out. More I want guys that want to try to fit in and do it in a spectacular way for sure, and they can do that. And I think that's what's great about our guys. So just having that nudge, if you say, as you mentioned, like nudging them along with reminders about who they want to be and who they can be and what's needed for them to be. I don't like to necessarily even call like role players, right? I've never bought into that. Years ago when we had, Jeremy Roach and Anthony Harris both went down with um, uh, ACL injuries right at the beginning of the season, and our guys, we just all stepped up, and we still tied for first for the league, and won 26 games, and had a great run at it. And because the guys, as I said to them, you guys, no one came here to be support players for Jeremy and for Ant. You guys are all here on your own abilities, and so they all rose up together, and it was a lot of fun to watch how they did that last year without Pat, as you mentioned. Hey, it just won't be the same way, but we still had to find a way to be successful. So it'll be a different way, but I think these kids are all capable of it because we have the mindset of like, we're all here together. We're all going to do this, and no one has to take a back seat to anybody. And again, that's why you talk about style play is so important, because we do play at a fast pace. We do share the ball. We do pop it. And defensively, you get a chance to get after it at all times. So kind of have a joke here. Number one thing you got to do in order to play for us is to play defense. And then we always ask the kids and recruits, what's the second most important thing? And they give you a bunch of different answers, right? Like rebounding or, shot selection, right? Whatever happens to be. And like, no, the second most important thing is defense. You have any idea what the third most important thing might be? And of course, the answer is defense. And I said, in my contract with every player is, if you do those three things, I'll give you some freedom offensively. And they buy into it. And so guys like, again, you look at like a Deshaun you mentioned, like a Doug McDaniel, Trevor Keels over the last few years, Brandon Slater. Here's these guys that we wanted to develop them offensively for sure. But when they give that kind of defense, when they play that kind of attacking style and they're going to make plays, then yes, of course, I want them to be more aggressive. You don't want to ever take advantage of kids that are great defensive players, right? And coaches can. We can do that. We can be like, hey, you're a great defensive player. Thank you for doing all you're doing. You'll get yours somehow great, like through the flow of the game. But over here, I'm going to have to make sure our shooter gets the ball, and I'm going to have this guy because he's more of an offensive guy, and we're going to get this. And I just don't. I've never thought that was fair to the guys that play that hard. And so we encourage our guys that play that hard defensively to play in that kind of attacking mindset. we often talk about playmakers on offense, right? We don't talk enough about playmakers on defense,
Mm,
and that's what we talk about being a playmaker defensively,
mm.
and that kind of sets the mindset for our guys to understand what we're looking for.
Gotcha. So stepping back into the timeline, when you got hired away by PBI, what did you learn about building relationships with the parents and players that you inherited?
Yeah, so that was tough because I actually inherited a group. There was about six seniors, right? That there and the expectation that Levi Franklin, who got a chance to go to the next level, he went to Robert Morris, and Levi's a good friend of mine, and did an amazing job here. And so those were all his guys, right? And so to kind of get them to buy into a new coach and a new way to do things, and kind of as it trickled down throughout the program, it was an interesting learning lesson for me. And then just making a move to public to private is a big deal. And now you're recruiting. Now you are building those relationships even that much more, because they're not just like the kids that live around your building and going to go to your school, right? And it's just like so they know who you're working with, and you have that like there are conversations. Adrian Mills was really important in that first year. He was the best player coming back. He was the leader, and he decided to stay as a senior. And I thought that really helped the whole progression of our program for that first year for him to stay. How the year he did, he ended up getting a Division II scholarship to Pace University, and but he was the heart and soul of our program early on, and he now coaches. Which is great. He's giving back, and so he's. I just remember that first year being a challenge for sure. Learning, knew it was going to be right. Complete respect for the WCAC. Know how good all the programs were, and coming in to be able to compete like that, it was going to be fun. I actually, I'll never forget our first game we played at McNamara. Very first game was WCC matchup at McNamara, and they beat us on a 60-footer, right? They hit a 60-footer to win the game. And I called Marty after the game, and I think Marty was like, I wonder why Glenn's calling me. Like, why is he calling me after the game? And I just called and said, man, if that's what it's like every day in the WCC, I'm excited about being here. Like it was because the atmosphere was great, the energy was great. Of course, we would have loved to have gotten that victory, but they made an incredible shot, and it was just like I was really excited because I knew that this league was going to be fun to compete in, and so having started out, knowing that with our young guys and trying to establish a new program, I knew it'd take a little bit of time for sure to kind of build into what we hope to be.
And that was the second straight 60-foot game winner that got hit on you, right?
So no, the no, I lost it. Magruder had beaten us in the state semifinals when I was at Roosevelt. My last game at Roosevelt, they had a 15-footer to win the
Okay.
game at the buzzer, and in my first game,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. So I certainly was feeling that I did
That's,
feel.
are we ever going to get away from this?
Yeah.
What was the golden era of the WCAC?
In my time, since I got here in '07. Um, I'm just thinking back to like the 2012 team that we had that won everything. I thought those teams were great. Those first few years were amazing. Like the DeMatha obviously winning three straight. We broke that streak with that win against them. Which, by the way, I thought there was gonna be another buzzer beater. James Robinson missed a 15-footer. We ended up winning by one in that 2012 game. That was amazing. But that I think the teams were so great. DeMatha was always loaded back then. You had some great teams across the board. Like just so many of the programs we were just all stacked. So I'd almost say like that would be you know I'm thinking just back 2010 to through 2014 2015 was really impressive with just the amount of talent that all the different teams had. We were very deep across the board within our league. And I think right now we have a lot of young talent coming back, so I'm excited about this year for sure. Um, as you build back up coming out of COVID and for the last 3 or 4 years, I think you've seen a lot of young teams, kind of grow up young and develop into some older teams now. But I'd say back then it was really impressive. I think across the board.
Talk about that too while we're there. This is unfamiliar territory, I think, for you kind of heading into a season. Obviously, you have a stud in Jordan Smith and some senior leadership with Adlon and Jaquan and some of the guys. But there are a lot of question marks as far as like who's going to take what role. And I'm sure that can be exciting in a certain way as a coach because there's probably less expectations and you're not sure things could go a lot of different directions. So talk about kind of Coaching that I don't want to call PVI an underdog. That would be wild, but based off of where you've been the last couple of years, that's kind of where you are now.
So I don't know. I think it's interesting. Every year, is a different challenge, right? Of what level the team is, where you think you can get your guys. My players are excited about the opportunities that they have. It's not like we're devoid of talent, or physicality, or we have a little bit of everything, right? We have great pieces all the way through. So I think they're excited. I think they're they've seen what has been done traditionally, and they want to live up to it. And so we're chasing ourselves a little bit in a way, which is a good thing. And in the fact that they have a blueprint of how it's been done, because it's been done the right way. It hasn't just been, hey, a bunch of talent just run around out there. The kids have seen how connected the guys are. And, I mean, think about, again, like even just last year, we quite arguably the best player in the DMV, one of the best in the country, is 6'11", and we don't have Patrick all year. And the kids never back down out of that. The year before, Smitty going down with an injury late. And the year before that, when we won it all, even as a young group, Darren Harris broke his finger the day before playoffs. So we lost a significant piece there, and then found a way to win that, win the WCAC and win states out of that. And I think so. Even that year, actually, I'm going to rewind because this is something for us to draw upon in our experience. So we do have a lot of work to do. It's going to take some time. It is exciting. It's a great challenge, and chip on the shoulder type thing. A few years ago, the same thought was had about us. We lost 8 straight during the summer, and going into that was Doug's senior year, right? And Deshaun was a junior, and all these young guys were sophomores, and some freshmen, and that team went 31-5, right? And top 10 in the country, won the WCAC. But their expectations, everyone's expectations were low. Like, oh, they're too young. They're not good enough. There was some other teams in our league that were thought to be ahead of us. And so we welcome the challenge. We see how good the league is for sure. It's amazing how many talented teams there are out there. So we like to think we're in the mix somewhere in there, and we're going to have to earn it. And so yeah, it is exciting. We're excited about that challenge, and they're working towards it. They have that kind of fire to them. So
While you were talking about that, what would your advice be to young coaches on managing expectations for like a team that's stacked, like the team that you had kind of last year, where I mean, I think every player in your starting five went high major. There's a lot of expectations that come from that, from not just your players, but like, your parents, the media, their friends and family, stuff like that. Talk about what you learned about kind of controlling what your kids are worried about, I guess.
yeah, and it's a good way to say it. Like, worried about, like, it's not worried. Like, so the high expectations, right? We've had those years where there's high expectations, and lean into it, right? Use it. Like, hey, this is great. What the reputation is there, the amount of respect that there is, that to think that you're going to be this good. Like, let's live up to it. Let's have fun with that challenge. Let's see how it is that we have everything lined up. We can check off all the boxes. So let's lean into it. And I think that's what I'd suggest, is not be tight with it. Acknowledge it, accept it, and embrace it, and then like, have fun with it. Like, this is just basketball, right? And so if you're, I've always said this: pressure isn't. I remember, pressure early on in my career was looking down at the Mathis bench and seeing Victor and the Grant, which I don't even know which Grant at this point, but just all the talent down at that bench.
If you
And
look
looking
down the
at my
bench, this
bench
would be one of
going,
them.
yeah, I mean, just did. They were so good. And looking down there and saying, oh man, I have no idea how we're going to beat them. That's pressure, right? You're looking at my guys compared to that. Like, if you have high expectations, that means you have some guys that have obviously shown that they can win at a high level and perform at a high level. So that's not pressure. That's just fun. Like, let's go and compete against the best that we can. And then, we learn from it, and we get better because of it. And we don't get too concerned. Like, you've seen our non-conference schedule over all these years. We don't get concerned with wins and losses in the non-conference, and just, we wanted to get better and give the kids opportunities to perform against the best. And when you do, and so say you are good enough to win those games, well, wow, what confidence comes from that, right? And examples of how much further we can be along. And then when you don't win, then you can learn so much about it and about yourselves. We back in 2012, when we ran the table in the WCAC, went 21-0. We lost to Oak Hill in a championship game in Chick-fil-A by 20. And man, we'd learn a lot about ourselves, and we saw what we were capable of, and we saw how we got beat down by a team that was better prepared and more focused, and we wanted to become that. And that was so. I think those moments are really important. So expectations, I think, embrace them, and the flip side of it, when there's not, the expectations aren't as strong. Let's have some fun and surprise some people and go after it. You can't when you have the high expectations, when as you said, there's so many people talking on the outside. You can kind of fall victim to it and get caught up in it. And so don't do that, because you still have to prove yourself, right? Early season, preseason rankings, you lose a couple games, you're out. Like, it's done. Like, so all the hype of you is gone. So I think that it's really important to discuss it. It's really important to just embrace it and have some real conversations about it, and not dismiss it, and also not to be too tight. Like, you're going to have some games when have high level expectations, and you can't just squeeze the kids all the time. Um, and I think that could be a mistake. You have a 20-point victory against someone. Maybe you play a little sloppy at times. Yes, you can learn from it, but like, sometimes as our tendency as coaches to be upset and kind of get after the kids. And it's like, well, they're not even enjoying the victories. Like, what are we doing here? Like, like, we got to enjoy, hey, we've had some good moments here. Like, we want to build into something more. So I don't know. I think that there's a lot of different ways to do it, but I would worry, if I was giving advice to a young coach, I would worry about squeezing too tight when the expectations are high, because the kids are going to recognize how you're looking and how you're feeling, and then you're gonna play off of that.
Going back to the timeline, I'm sorry, I'm super ADD today. Talk about, early in your career at PVI, you guys beat Oak Hill and Montverde in the same season, and that kind of gave not only that team momentum, but kind of the program momentum moving forward. Talk about how big those games were for PVI.
Yeah, so that's coming off. That was coming off the big run that we had. So we had built up. We had that great year in 2012, and then Stan Robinson, who was our best player coming back, transferred to Findlay Prep. And so I was even asked, like, hey, do you want to get out of going to Bass Pro, or do you want to get out of playing Oak Hill? And they had a 56-game winning streak at the time. And I said, no, let's go. My freshmen and sophomores, it's great opportunity for them. And so when we beat Oak Hill, I thought that was just an amazing victory for our guys. Showed some toughness. We were really tough that game. And again, for freshmen and sophomores to do that, we had a senior in Jamal Robinson, who had been part of that nucleus and had started for all 4 years. He was our leader for sure. But those young guys really just stepped up. And then so we went to Bass Pro Tournament Champions, and Kevin Dorsey had 2 game winners right in a row, back to back. And both games, St. John's Bosco, when we played them in the semifinals, no shot clock at Bass Pro. We're down 7 with 2 minutes left, and we came back and won that game. And then I hit the game winner. Kevin did. In the following night, we're down 12 with 5 minutes left against Mount Verde, number 1 team in the country, and we've walked them down, found a way, and then we beat them in that was overtime, and found a way to beat him in overtime. And Kevin hit another game winner at the buzzer. So, but that being able to win at that high level on the national scene really kind of propelled us. And we never looked back. We've been ranked in the top 20 at some point in every year since 2011. So it's been a great run as far as the expectations. And again, you have to play those games in order to have your kids have those opportunities. And along the way, sometimes we've lost to some powerhouses for sure. But I think we might be the only one to be able to say the teams that we've beaten over the years. We've beaten Mount Verde, we've beaten Oak Hill, beat Sierra Canyon, beat IMG, we beat St. Anthony's, and just the amount of teams that we've beaten that are high level teams. There's a long laundry list of them, and you had to play those teams, right? You have to want to schedule them. You have to want to step up into those moments, and I think our kids have always embraced that.
I think it was an interview with Jake in the Paint. Shout out a friend of the pod. I love and miss Jake Rosen in the area. But talk about the philosophy behind allowing your players to coach themselves in time and score situations in practice to kind of prepare for those moments in games. Because everything I've heard, from former players and current players is kind of in those moments, like, you give them ownership of that, like, you instill confidence in them, but it's kind of like we've already worked on this. Now just kind of apply it. When did you learn that? And, how have you kind of sharpened that in game as far as like what drills are you doing that puts them in those spots?
Yeah, no, great question, and love Jake as well. So I hope Jake watches a little bit of this. I came up with that a long, long time ago when I was at Roosevelt, as far as the time and score, giving my players, making them coach themselves. Because what we all know is like the players will do what you ask them to do, right? So we're in a minute 30 left, and here's the situation, like whatever happens to be, and so we'll yell out and we'll give instructions, and they'll do what you ask them to do, but do they understand why they're doing it, right? And so I always wanted my guys to understand why they were doing it. So if they have to coach themselves, and both teams have to coach themselves, and they'll make mistakes, like how to handle, like when to press, when not to press. Managing the shot clock for sure, obviously with the shot clock era. Foul situations. Are we looking for something quick? Are we not? Whatever it happens to be, when they get a chance to have to do it themselves and have to coach themselves, then we stop, circle up, and talk about the mistakes. Hey, right there with a minute left, there was no need to press because you're going to get the ball back because with 30 seconds left, there's a one possession game. So we wouldn't have gone into full court pressure, running and jumping and exposing ourselves. That's just as an example. So I'd walk through all the different things that, hey, maybe we would actually want to do it this way. Or you took a shot too quickly in the shot clock when we had it, we could have used a little bit more and put a little more pressure on the other team. So, or we should have fouled quicker, right? As far as um, the situation. So when you give it to them and they have to kind of figure it out and they get to coach themselves through it during the season, they're going to get so much better at it because they're understanding why we're doing what we're doing. So when we get in a real situation in a game, yes, I'll give them the information from the sideline, but they already probably know what we're going to try to do, and how we're gonna play it out. And so guys like someone like Ben Hammond, just absorbs it all and is going to figure out how to actually execute it properly at the end of a game of how to handle the situation. So he can now communicate to the guys out there. We also have a bunch of terminology that we want to use, just very simple things that they can just hear one thing and snap into and understand what we're trying to do. But I think that's a fun thing to do because early on, sometimes you just kind of shake your head and go, "Oh my gosh, what were you thinking? What are we doing out here?" But they get so much better at it, and so that's the reasoning behind it. And I think it's worked and served well for us.
I think the most impressive thing about your program consistently is like the defense is good as far as the swarming principles and stuff. But I think that how quickly you switch ends is and get a rebound and immediately go the other way. Like you have a saying in your program, we're a 10-0 run waiting to happen. We talk about some of the principles within that fast break that you have.
Yeah, I think actually it might be right above me here. Can you see there? Yeah, yeah, there you
I can see.
go. The 10-0 run waiting to happen. You see it up there? I have
Okay.
some of our sayings up on the wall.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, so again, goes back to like just philosophy. I've always thought it was like a lot of fun to just play at a fast pace, right? Like it's a fun brand of basketball, and it has to start on the defensive end. But if we get the ball out the net and just run at people, it gives our guys put a lot of pressure on the rim, gets them out moving, and it also what it does too is it simulates as much as possible what the next level is like, right? Like we can't simulate what's going to be like to be an 18 to 24-year-old college level and how fast they are. But I want to get my guys prepared for college. So if we're going to play slow basketball, that's not preparing them. Like even as fast as we run, it's still like that's just a good um, stepping stone for them, foundation, if you will, to for what the next level is. And so that's part of our philosophy too. But our guys like to get out on the open court. And if you play fast, you learn how to play fast and make quick decisions. You're gonna be better when you get to college because you have to make so many decisions so quickly. And so that's part of it too. But our guys embrace it. They love to run. Let's after the ball goes through the net, let's go. Like everyone's running all five, and we're working on it all the time. We have some drills, some 5-on-0 drills for sure, but it's just the pace of play and practice. There'll be turnovers if you don't run fast enough. There's be turnovers if the guys don't get to the corners. There'll be turnovers if the rim runner doesn't get to where he needs to, or a point guard doesn't sweep through. And passing is so important in all this. So like again, a lot of times at the beginning of the season, we're a little messy with it, right? There'll be times where someone will throw something at a head and it'll be a turnover. And I'm like, that's the right idea though. Like I want to encourage it. I don't want to discourage it. And running's hard. Like it's a lot. There's a reason most teams don't do it is because you need to have that. It's just a step or two. Like, 'cause a lot of teams can run as well, but you have to be so consistent with it. and guys can actually get tired. And when you get tired, you don't want to run, and that makes sense. So you have to really buy into it and really want to do it. But when you start doing it, you start to see the success that you can have, and that's why you need to have guys like a Ben Hammond, a Doug McDaniel. Guys are going to push the ball as fast as they can. Now Turk Brown for us, Jordan Smith, Jordan Hunter, they're all fast and all can get going, pushing the ball, and the ability to kind of like share the ball and get the ball out of your hands. I think we've seen over the last couple of years just how quickly Ben can get the ball out of his hands to a teammate running the floor. So it's not over dribbling. So yeah, so conceptually, like philosophically, this is who we've always been. We want to run, we want to be a running team, but those are some of the reasons why. And then the success of it, if you can get 6 to 8 points just in transition, but again, not even just that, it might even just be like wearing out the opponent, right? To be able to convert from one end to the other, so very important. I've always believed this, and this goes back to my days with Billy Lanier when he was at Oxon Hill and we were together. He's just like they like to play fast, and I was like, and they like to scramble all the time. It's hard to kind of rev up, right? It's if you're not used to playing at pace, it's hard to rev up to it. But we can play at pace, but we can also back it down, right? So we don't have to we don't have to have a running game completely full throttled to win. We can win a game 55-53 if it's just a slug out. We can do that. But it's really hard if you're going to try to go the other way. And
Mm.
so anyway, that 10-0 run waiting to happen concept has served us well. And because when you play at a fast pace, if you do get down, it's not as insurmountable as you might think. And our guys buy into that. Years ago we were at O'Connell. That was after Jeremy and Ant went down with those ACL injuries. The very next game, first time we don't have them, is at their place, and we're down 22 points with 4 minutes to go in the third quarter, and we came back and outscored them 31-6. And it was just because of that pace, that belief. Once we got going, it was just we were rolling. And I can cite a lot of different things, like the 7 overtime game when we went up to Archbishop Wood. We were down 15 at their place with 5 minutes left, and the place was going nuts. Crowded place up in Philly. It was like I always say, 5 versus Philly because it was insane, and then we were able to like just again pace, pace, pace. So it gives you an opportunity to come back in games as well.
Have you ever coached a coming out party more high level than Doug versus Montverde at Hoofa?
Yo, you're 100. Man, that is so. Every time anyone brings up that Mount Ver game, right? It was a great game. We were up 30-20 at half. We were playing amazing, but that right there in that moment, and remember too, he was because that was actually that weekend, the following weekend when we played that game, and he was
That was the
explaining
game
to us.
after you lost Ant, I think.
It was the next weekend. So the O'Connell game was right before it, and
Yeah.
then it was the weekend of it. And the Mount Ver game was supposed to be. And I remember watching Mount Ver going, I don't know how we're gonna get the ball across half court. Right? We just lost the best backcourt in the country, and we have Doug's great, but he's only a freshman, and he's going up against their unbelievable players. Right? I think Cade Cunningham was on that team. Like they were so loaded. And I'm watching them dismantle. They were dismantling Sunrise on a Friday night. And I'm like, and they couldn't. Sunrise couldn't get the ball across half court. I'm like, I don't know how we can get the ball across half court. And so anyway, going into the season, Doug was supposed to be like our 11th man, and his mom made the decision. She saw Jeremy and Trevor and Ant there, and she's like, I want him to learn from those guys, and he wanted to learn from those guys. He was so excited about playing with those guys, but learning from them. And all of a sudden, here he is. He's thrust into this like, hey, you got to come in here and perform against the number one team in the country. And boy, and the place just loves him, right? Like he comes out and that kid was so confident, still is. We love Doug. We just love Doug, his personality. He's so confident. He's the nicest kid in the world. Like my little one loved him back when she was a little baby, like, because Doug is so good with little kids, and he's a sweetheart of a human being. But he's also got that confidence and toughness about walking in. He wasn't even afraid as a freshman, and it showed out that night. And the place was electric, and just rooting for him. And that was definitely a coming out party for like Doug McDaniel to kind of let the world know he was going to be a force to be reckoned with for 4 years.
All right. So which group do you look back on, coach, and say that was my coaching staff's best job?
So the from a recent standpoint, the 2022 team that went 31-5, Doug McDaniel as a senior, Deshaun Harris Smith as a junior, and then we have a lot of freshmen and sophomores that were just learning. And we thought that was going to be a challenging year. We had an amazing non-conference schedule that was very challenging as well. And they stepped up to it's amazing how they kind of rose up so quickly, handled everything, won a lot of close games, found a way to win every single game. It wasn't always pretty because we were in work in progress, and that was coming off a summer where we lost 8 games in a row, and folks were thinking that maybe we were a year away, and they wanted to arrive early in that group. So I thought the coaching staff did an amazing job of keeping that team moving in the right direction and believing in themselves. And then when we beat how about this? When we lost to Sierra Canyon in a championship game at the Iolani out in Hawaii, but it was a 1 point game, and we had a shot at the buzzer to tie it, and that was when things really turned, and they really believed in themselves that they could arrive earlier, and then they were committed to it after that. And when we beat them at Bass Pro to win the championship, it was just like we just took off from there. So I thought that was a challenging year because they weren't ready in a lot of respects, but they had the ability to. So how much do you push? How much do you accept because it's just they're learning. And I think you can, again, I mentioned this earlier, you can squeeze them too much sometimes, and I think you squeeze teams, you can lose them, and when a team is growing and they're young. So I thought that was really a challenging and very rewarding, obviously, team that I thought our coaches did an amazing job of kind of just staying together, moving forward, and finding a way. That would be the most recent one. The 2012 team, again, that undefeated team, that team went 10-0 in games decided in last 30 seconds of a game. And so for that team to rise up the way it did, and we found ways to manufacture, that was a lot of fun to see. That was our first team that kind of broke through. And when you break through, that's not easy. And that was a lot of fun as a coach.
Let's talk about practice. Shout out Allen Iverson. What drills does your team do every day, and what are some of the favorite and least favorite ones for them that you think are beneficial to their development?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I love always hearing our guys. We get very competitive in shell drill, and the kids love shell drill, not just from a defensive standpoint, from an offensive standpoint. We get a lot of our offensive rhythm out of paint touches and kickouts and being able to play at pace within that 4-on-4, just simplistic shell drill, and how competitive it gets. So the kids really do kind of buy into that. We have a couple of fast break drills that we do that are very competitive, that are live, and they get into that, and a couple of passing drills that lead into all of what we do, and just to see how much better they've gotten. So those are a couple of the things drill wise that I think the kids, kind of really sink their teeth into. We have we have a continuous 2-on-1, 3-on-2 full court scramble drill that is, again, the kids love it because it's so competitive, and they really get flying around. And we always talk about playing with their hair on fire. It's one of those drills that kind of get them into that mode of doing so. But it's always been kind of fun to hear the guys talk about shell drill and how much they just loved competing in shell drill. I do something I'll have a guy that I think has played really well defensively, or maybe the game before has shown out, and I said, hey, you get to pick 3 teammates that you really trust right now to defend with you, and he gets to pick 3 teammates. And then I look at someone that didn't get picked, I say, oh man, like, you feeling disrespected right now? Like, you feel like, you feeling challenged right now? Like, so and so didn't pick you. Like, let's go. Like, you get to pick 3 teammates now, and then you get to challenge these guys. And so, it gets amped up, and that was like that. And when I was at Roosevelt, like, I could always kind of tell how good our teams were going to be was based on how competitive the shell drill simplistic form of 4-on-4 was gonna if they're really gonna get after it. And so anyway, it sounds very simplistic, but it's always kind of held true for us. We do a drill for pace that's a 15-second shot clock, and so just getting up and down the court, and that's always been something I think has been fun to watch, to see how much better we get in those segments.
Talk about the work after this. I'm definitely gonna have to tell you about this one-on-one defensive drill that just popped into my mind. That would be really fun to hear how it goes with Smitty. Talk about the work on your craft pockets in practice and how that's kind of benefited your players over the years.
Yeah, I've always used this like before practice, but even also during what we're getting. So any of us, right, that ever played, like, you get lost if you love the game. You like to work at your craft, like, just have time, right, to just go out there and say, I'm going to work on something that I want to work on. I can get lost in these 20 minutes, and I love doing that as segments of practice, because we're going to do system stuff, right? Coaches are going to be like, hey, we have everything scheduled, we have everything like mapped out, And I think kids lose out on the opportunity to just like hear the ball bouncing, walking in, and maybe get a chance to do something they want to work on and work on with a coach or work on it with each other. So we do have pieces of our practice we just call work on your craft, and they'll get a chance to kind of like get themselves lost in the love of the game, getting that ball in your hands, like working on your shot, working on your rhythm with it. And I think that's been something the kids kind of buy into. So again, something that I'll give them freedom to do, right? Maybe say it's at the beginning of practice, and I'll just walk in, and I always go in and say hi to all the players, just to get a gauge from them and just like kind of get them some energy going into the practice as you shift over from the academic side of the day. But when you have that time to work on your craft, I get to watch the kids to see who's in the moment, who's actually putting that work in, who's like working on something specific. I get to watch what they're doing, right? So like, man, if a kid likes to go to one certain spot, like, well, why am I not going to try to find time where he gets that shot from that certain spot? Or whatever they're working on, am I helping him translate that into game action? So I like to watch it too. And then through that time too, you get to see who's really serious. Are they coming in? Are they playing around? Are they not real serious about their craft? Or are they business-like? Are they working like, no surprise to anyone that Darren Harris was a kid that came into the gym and just got to work, because he was committed to it and he wanted to work on his shot and work on his shooting. That's why he's so great. But a lot of different pieces that we've had over the years, it's been a lot of fun to just watch them embrace that. Excuse me. And then one thing that we like to do too is there are times where I'll flip it and do a lot of the system stuff, a lot of the team-oriented stuff early, and then at the end do drill work. And that's when you really find out, say in the last half an hour of a challenging practice, they've been playing really hard. Are they going to work on their craft in that last half hour? When we're doing drill work, whether we're doing group work, small group work, or individual, like how are they going to embrace that 30 minutes, or are they just going to walk through and just get their work in and get done with it? And so it's a lot of fun to kind of see that too, to see the guys kind of like, no, we love doing that work, and we're going to work at it with a seriousness that it should.
I'm going to challenge you to be short and sweet and concise on these. So the nuances of coaching point guards, like one sentence on that.
You got to care about everybody else.
Athletes and like slash non-shooters.
Your activity level is your ticket. Make sure that is your thing. Make the main thing for you.
Bigs.
Bigs, do everything. Play 94 feet by 50. Do not just be 6 feet and in.
Okay. And then assistant coaches.
Oh man, no egos. We're all here for the kids. We're high school. It's about developing 14 to 18-year-olds. So it's not about us, it's about them. And
I
when you
like
have
that.
that mentality, good things happen.
All right, so we're gonna get into some philosophy stuff. Really appreciate the time and want to get you out to practice here soon. The best college recruiters, what do they do consistently when recruiting your guys? So I think the answer is going to be different for top level guys, the guys from your program that should probably go to a level higher, but that are recruited like maybe we think that they should be high major kids, but it just ends up that they're going to go to a mid major, be really good. And then like the low major coaches and D2, D3 coaches, what kind of strategies have you seen work with your kids that you like?
Yeah, let me talk about the philosophy on like what level. So I've always felt like go to where you're loved the most, be impactful. So don't get caught up in level. That's really important. And then things just work out. I've never had a kid come back to me and say, "Hey, coach, like I was all league in this league, but the league wasn't good enough." The success is there. So I don't get caught up, and I want to make sure I caution my families and my players don't get caught up in the level. Find the right fit, and then their love for you as far as how they recruit you and how does you fit in. The best recruiters, I think, are just very genuine and have a vision, for where the kid fits in. Like there's so much, the kids hear so much thrown at them that a lot of it just is minutia and it's the same thing. So, what resonates with a player is going to be really, man, I really feel like they understand my game. They understand who I am as a player and how it is that I can fit in and help them. And they, give really good examples of past players that, you remind me of someone that, filled this role for us. So let me show you some of the things that how we utilize them. It's a really good, an effective way for kids to really see scheme wise what you think of them as a player and kind of have that. And I think that my players appreciate the honest feedback as far as where they are as a player, like what, developmental, what they need to do, what they need to work on. So I think that when I hear from my players, when I ask them, like, what resonates with you, what was been said, what kind of assistant coach have you liked, what head coach have you liked, I think those are the really some important things that coaches can do for players is they get just that connection of trust that you understand who I am as a player and what I'm capable of, and not just being in generalities. And I think that's significant.
So you've been on both sides of the coin when it comes to transfers within the high school space, and even in the last couple of years, what have you learned about the right way to approach that situation?
Yeah, and we've seen it for a long time, right? At our level, I mean, all the college coaches are talking about it, and some bemoan the fact that there's so much. And I was like, no, I love it. I think it's great. None of us are on this earth long enough, right? Go find your happiness. And if you're not happy, if you feel like there's a situation for you that you can go to, like, good for you. Like, I want you to embrace that and go for it. And that's whether it's someone that plays for me that's not really feeling it, or someone else that may be coming to us knocking on our door because they're somewhere else and it just may not be the right fit. So I'm very comfortable with that space as far as sitting down with families and just trying to be as real as possible to say, here's where you are, here's what we think, here's the outlook, and let's work together on it. And if it doesn't match up, let's go ahead. And I try to help guys at times to try to find a new place, and really respect the fact that that is part of their journey. Um, and then, on the other side of it, like, hopefully we can provide a situation for someone that is on the other side of this and looking for a different opportunity. Does it line up for us, and where they fit in and how they fit? So I think those are really important components. But that layer of if it's not working, if a family or a player is not really fitting in or buying in, let's not fight it. Let's find you a better situation for you that you may feel much more comfortable with the coach, with the school, with the teammates, whatever happens, whatever it might be. And I see it all the time at the college level. We're all seeing that right now. Is am I happy with my situation? Am I happy with what the opportunities are? And how can I make all of this work? Um, so yeah, it's an interesting time. It's an interesting landscape, but we've been dealing with it at the high school level for a long time. And it doesn't have to be dramatic. I think people make it dramatic because people make things dramatic, right? Like that's a human condition. Like, we complicate things as humans. Sometimes it's just a matter of sitting down, looking at it, and being as real as possible. I always talk to everyone about, like, hey, we maybe like what I'm sharing, the vision that I have. But I always say, like, hey, in 365 days, we're gonna like sit back down, and we're gonna reevaluate all this and see. I hope all the things that I talked about are delivered on, but we also know there's going to be ups and downs throughout the journey. So finding the right people to go on that journey with, knowing there's going to be ups and downs, and feeling that. I've seen some really high level college coaches talk to my players. Some are buying into them, right? What they're saying and what they're selling, for as far as their program, and then others aren't. They're like, nah, I'm not feeling that guy, and that's okay. Like, it doesn't make anyone right or wrong. It's like any relationship. It's got to be genuine. There's got to be a connection there. And if it's not, that's okay. Recognize it and move on. The worst thing you can do really is, like, have a kid that's just not happy and not buying in and not wanting to, and having that challenge and having that fight. Like, no, it's no, let's you find your path. And then again, vice versa on the other side of finding the right ones that the hearing your messaging, and hey, I want to be part of that.
Now that you have PVI rolling and have more of a pick of the litter than you previously might have, talk about what goes into your staff's selection process on accepting freshmen or transfers that fit your program's culture.
Yeah, one of the first things, and I actually mentioned this earlier, but one of the really first things is trying to figure out the families, right? Trying to figure out what their expectations are, because if you have unrealistic expectations, you're going to struggle. So realistic expectations of where they're fitting in, and how they can actually develop in your program is really important. But we look for those kids that are willing to fit in and play with other great players and want to play with other great players. And I think I think our coaching staff does an amazing job of recognizing that. Morello Vest, excuse me, excuse me. Morello Vest, I think, is amazing at really kind of figuring out families, figuring out the players and what makes them tick, and are they a good fit for us? DeMar Marine joined us for the last couple of years. He does an amazing job. I can go on and on about all our coaches that kind of do a great job of watching and evaluating the makeup and the expectations of these families. I think that's really been important, and we actually ask our players. We want feedback from the players and parents that we already have in our program. I had a college coach tell me a couple years ago, one of his favorite things about coming to a PBI game is he can't tell which player belongs to which parent because everyone's so excited for all of them. And we want to continue that, right? You're going to have announcements. Do you want, if you want to pause it? We really do like get feedback from our current players and parents about the people that are out in the community, the potential prospects, whether transfers or incoming freshmen, because they know, right? They played with them, they've seen them on the circuit, they've gotten to know these families, and some are kind of warning signs like, yo, hey, I know this player's talented, but I'm not sure they're going to fit into what the way we want to play. Or they know this kid's one of us, like he just there's a vibe about how he already plays, that we definitely want them. So it's amazing to hear from my older players. They're really good at identifying kids and saying, hey, this kid would be a good fit. Once we're able to, if we get in contact with them, or if they're, younger kids, we're keeping an eye on. And I think that's been a big part of our success is finding the right ones that have that mentality. And, all of them aren't the superstars coming out, right? Like we all know Jordan Smith Jr. was going to be an incredible player. Trevor Keels back when he was rising up. We have plenty of those examples of kids that hit the ground running right away as freshmen, and there's others that take a little bit of time to develop. Well, those that need a little bit of time to develop are the parents on board, understanding, hey, this is going to be a process. A lot of times it's physicality, right? It's just straight up physicality. They're just not, their bodies aren't as developed. I often joke with kids. I said, are you ready to play EYBL 17s, right? Like right now, could you help contribute to the EYBL 17s winning a championship? And of course, the answer is no. We're playing 14, maybe 15, whatever happens to be. I said, well, that's what you need to do in order to play for us, the varsity level, right? Like we're playing the equivalent of EYBL 17s in high school. So a lot of times it's just a physicality. And so like we need to develop that or find ways to work around that, right? If you're going to play when you're younger. So the basketball IQ comes in, the awareness, like the activity level, whatever happens to be. But I think just being, kind of being able to figure out those kids that are willing to understand that it's going to take a little bit longer for them, for their development, for them to get where they want to, and their journey. Everyone's journey is a little bit different, and we try to do a really good job of just figuring out like who's realistic about their journeys, and we're trying to be as honest as possible, sharing like, hey, here's what we're seeing. The good, the bad. I always talk about the spotlight. Like, hey, man, everyone wants the spotlight, but it's either going to shine on you or burn you. And so you better be prepared for it. And a lot of it sometimes just maturity. Can you handle the daily grind? You have to take care of your academics. You have to take care of you have to find proper nutrition and get the right amount of sleep and be able to do this every single day, not just have one good game every three or one good practice every four. Like, we got to find guys that are willing to understand that. And you're coming in competing again with other great players. Iron sharpens iron. And so that's kind of that's kind of where we as from a evaluation and as far as recruiting goes, that's what we're trying to find. And it's kind of fun to see which kids in our program like the ones that we're bringing in and are appreciative because those they fit in quicker, right? Isaiah Abraham, for example, Patrick Gongba a couple years ago knew so many of our players. We were very comfortable. I played with them when they were younger, and Darren or Ben, so they knew each other. They felt very comfortable coming in, so they hit the ground running. Josh Oduro didn't know anyone coming in when he came in as a junior, but wow, just his personality, the way he fit in with the teammates, like it looked like he played for PVI, from day one. And those guys are really important to be able to find as far as transfers go. And of course, the younger ones, it's about like they all have their own journeys. So
I heard in I forget the podcast interview, but you said that you put in a John Beeline motion offense to try to switch things up at the beginning of the season, and you ended up scrapping it. I think like after working it for 3 weeks, I think in the first game. What have you learned as a coach about when to swallow your pride and switch gears, when to stick with something because you really believe in it, like that it's going to work eventually, and like what input do you take from both your assistant coaches and your players in those scenarios?
yeah, so like that was back when I was at Roosevelt, and was just born out of me being maybe a little bit bored of like, okay, I want to do something different. I want to learn something different. I want to like a different scheme. And I saw the five out and I thought it'd be great. And then what I noticed was we were never attacking the basket. We were moving the ball pretty. It was beautiful basketball, but we weren't getting anything. And the personnel I had were much better at dribble drive. So we got back into our attacking paint touches, driving space as we call it. And it was a great learning lesson for me early on when I was at Roosevelt. I'd say nowadays, like I'm not afraid to throw a 1-2-2 zone. Like people think we're always like pressure, we're always running and jumping, and like no, I'm happy to whatever it's going to take to win.
It's the
So we'll
number
make.
one way to keep people out of the paint when you're playing a team with good drivers. I don't know why people don't use it more often.
I truly love it. I think it's been something that I've been doing since I was, well, actually, I got it from my high school coach. I mean, that's what we did, but a gazillion years ago. And I thought it worked at Roosevelt at times, for us to be able to, and then for sure, as time has gone on here, I think we've been very successful with it. But having said that, like born out of necessity. That team we had back when I talked about earlier with Jeremy and Ann out, we were going to be going track meet every single game. All of a sudden that year, we're like, no, we have to change things up. Like we're gonna have to play some more zone. We're gonna have to mix things up. We're gonna have some zone pressure to maybe slow the other team down a little bit and just kind of get people out of rhythm. This last couple of years, we have not been great all the time with just with our attacking defense, with our trapping. So we've kind of changed it up a little bit with our defensive pressures, so that we're not as exposed, right? And so now we're able to kind of make you earn every single shot instead of giving some up, just to increase the possessions, if you will. So and it's on the offensive end. We've always There's a rhythm, there's a sharing piece to it, but we mix it up every single year as far as our personnel, making sure we have the right packages and have multiples of everything so that we can kind of, as time goes on during the season, you would see us like kind of change things up just because we're very aware of how people are playing us, and then we're going to try to make those adjustments. So that's why we want our players to learn how to play actions and not just sets all the time. And that's why early on, like even you're going to see this in mid-summer and fall as we go into the season, we might be a little more vanilla than others because we don't have our full arsenal, our full packaging, because we want to let things kind of organically develop, if you will. But what we never stop doing is we never stop talking about rebound. We never stop talking about running. We never stop talking about sharing the ball, shot selection. Those things are just what we have to do as elements of what we do.
What have you learned about the best ways to get a pulse, like get the pulse of your team? I'm sure that's changed over the years.
I think let them talk. Get them in a room. We have a lot of team meetings. We have a lot of just sit downs and have conversations. I want to hear from them. I want to get what they're thinking. We have something we call the circle of truth, and we circle up our desks and in a classroom and we just start talking. Like I want to hear what they think. I want to hear you share with each other about what, challenging each other to be better, or give some positive feedback as far as like, hey, what I think you're bringing to the team. So hey, Aaron, I really appreciate how does your rebound, and like I want to make sure that I noticed that. Like that's an important. Like, hey, coach, like here's some of the things that we've been thinking about. Like, because we talk often about how do you beat us? Like, we were self-scouting, like how are you going to beat us? Like, what are we going to do? And then we walk through, and it's amazing. Like the basketball IQ on these kids, they have great self-awareness, and so they'll list the things of like, yeah, that those are things that are really important. So let's work towards it. Like let's have a plan. Like let's have a purpose of like working through, so that we can fix some of these, so we can just get better at it. Last couple of years, we haven't been great at dribble drive. Like we have not been, naturally just having guys like I can go off the bounce, like a Ben Hammond for sure. Smitty can get places. But you wouldn't say that Isaiah or Darren or Garrett or Patrick or or just the rest of the collection are great at just getting by people and creating. So we had to scheme things up as far as like, okay, where to attack from, how to attack, how do we do it all together? So being just very aware of what our strengths are and what some of our challenges are, I think are really important. And then so you do that through conversation. You do that with team meetings. You do that with let's talk, not just talk at them. You need the feedback from them. What are you guys seeing? What are you guys feeling? And you have to have the right guys to share. So Deshaun Harris-Smith was a great example because he was never afraid to share. He was never afraid to share the good, the bad, like, here's where we are. And we never took it. Again, I talked about earlier, no drama. We don't have drama. We just talk it through. Okay, where are we? What are we doing? What's going right? What's going wrong? Ben Hammond, I thought the last couple of years really just developed into an amazing speaker in front of his teammates, not just as a captain. Garrett Sundra, all his teammates really appreciated Garrett because Garrett was willing to share and always had really good perspective. And he would be, he'd be kind of the spokesperson for the guys a lot of times because he wasn't afraid to kind of, hey, here's where we are, coach, or here's what we're thinking. I don't want our guys to be like concerned, like, oh, how we're going to react as a coaching staff, or we're going to get defensive as a coaching staff because you said this, and like, oh, I have to prove that we're right. Like, oh, okay, maybe we need to switch things up. Maybe we need to, or let me explain. Oh, I see, I hear where you're coming from. To say it to the team, I hear where you're coming from. Let me explain why I'm doing it this way.
Mhm.
And then you don't know as a coach until you get to hear them and have some feedback. Then I'm like, oh man, I never thought about that. I maybe haven't explained this well enough about why I'm doing what I'm doing. And then it was like, then they'll have their aha moments of like, oh, I see now more where you're coming from, coach, about what kind of the plan of attack is. And those kind of conversations I think are big for us. But again, no egos with all that. Like, let's just, we got things to fix. Let's fix them, And then film is great. Film's always great to have those conversations and see where they are.
It's a video
And what they're
example of
doing.
it.
What's
Yeah,
that?
because it's a video example of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
What have you learned over the years about how you ramp up in the preseason?
Oh man, that's a great question. It is, you have to be very careful. I try to in the preseason not to have as big a voice into everything going on. I want my assistant coaches to have their ability to put an imprint on the team. They're so impactful. I have a wonderful staff that is very knowledgeable. So, and that's a great time to see how they attack things. And I give them the freedom to do that as coaches, like to take pieces of it. And hey, like let's work on some of those things. You tell me what you want to work on. You work on them, so that I get to see because we don't my way isn't always the best way, right? And my assistant coaches have some really wonderful ways of explaining or doing drill work that leads into what we're all trying to get accomplished. I think that's really, really awesome in our preseason to see that you can't do too much system stuff in the preseason, in my estimation. You want to do enough skill work that builds into it, but I don't want them to be robotic. And so that's why in September and October, the ramp up is really important from competition standpoint, flow standpoint, rhythm standpoint, but not to get too caught up in X's and O's and system stuff because that can get bogged down and then all of a sudden it's a long season because you're doing a lot of system stuff and that's so I think you see the same thing with colleges. College coaches now that there's not a specific day that they start, right? They have more time, they can work with the guys in the off season, so they got to be careful not to burn them out. I
Yeah,
feel the same way. I don't want to burn them out with too much um, quote unquote drill work or system stuff
yeah,
early on. The ramp up's got to be, and then so November 8th, I guess all know my favorite holiday is November 8th, which is first day of practice. So when
mhm.
it's official and we get after it, I want it to feel different. I want that first day of official practice to be, tryouts start. Tryouts are a different animal. It's a different vibe. We're going every day now and we're doing something we're doing like more team stuff to build into things. And I want that to feel differently than workout in October.
Got you. What have last question, then we'll get into some quick hitters and then get you out of here. What have you learned about players helping players that are great practice players that struggle to translate that success into the game?
Man, that's a great question. And because there are guys that just confidence wise, right? Like you're hoping that shot goes in because you give them confidence because they're doing some great work in practice. I think you just have to constantly keep going back to them. Like you have to kind of allow some things to happen during games for those kids that are putting that work in, putting that time in. You've seen them you see having results during practice, and it just hasn't translated to a game yet. You have to keep putting them in those positions and keep talking them through it. Take that shot, make that move. That's okay. You did this. I believe in that you can do this. Whatever happens to be offensively, defensively. I think that's just that because until they get over that hump, right? Until they see it, and then once they do, then you have obviously real life, like, hey, look at what you've done. Or it's only happened once or twice. Well, let's harp on the once or twice that it did actually happen instead of being worried about the 3 or 4 times. We often as coaches, and we all have to check ourselves on this. We are going to talk because we're trying to correct things. We're going to go on to the the um, the criticisms of it all, right? When things don't go right, we're gonna try to fix it. But when things do go right, that needs to be um, emphasized and celebrated in a way that player now knows I'm looking to do this again. And then also for those guys that have a hard time translating, make it simplistic. Don't have them try to do everything. Try to focus on a couple things and build into it.
All right, man. Quick hitters. What brand of gum are you chewing every game?
Whatever Curtis Simons has in his pocket, Curtis Simons gonna be two pieces of gum before every game. I chew the heck out of those for the whole first half, and I usually throw them out at halftime because my jaw's already hurting. That's
I
so
was gonna
funny you
say,
asked that. That's
I was gonna
hilarious.
say, because you're really working,
Yep,
working up
yep.
some games. Uh, all the players that you've ever coached, Roosevelt and PVA, who's winning the one-on-one tournament?
Ooh, oh my. Give me a second. I'm gonna need a second for that. Um, I'll break it out. I'm gonna break it out. Roosevelt, Delonte West, and then Eric Green, PVI. Let me just think about if there's anyone who's going to challenge Eric. Um, Eric and Trevor. I think Eric and Trevor would be kind of fun to see.
Hmm.
Eric versus Trevor.
What player got the most out of themselves?
Oh,
I should have prepped you for these. My fault.
that's okay. No, this is good. Um, Coleman Johnson, 2012. He ended up being first team all Met, all first team all WCAC. Coleman Johnson was an amazing player and really helped our program achieve a lot. So I'd say Coleman.
What player had big expectations from day one and just delivered?
Trevor Keels, Jeremy Roach, Ant Harris would have if he had that senior year. Because boy, um, yeah, those guys on the front side of it all. Deshaun and Darren, I'd say over the last couple of years.
Who is the most unassailable coaching resume in history?
Oh,
Any
Morgan,
Morgan
you
Wood
you talking about like any coach
at any
ever?
level? Yep.
Oh, Morgan Wooten. Morgan Wooten set the standard for all coaches at all levels.
Hmm.
Just yeah, Hall of Fame person too.
What's the best regular season game you've coached in?
Hmm. Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, the 130 to 128 seven overtime against Archbishop Wood is legendary. Like that was amazing. Seven overtimes.
Okay.
I'd
Who's
say.
the recruiting wise that you wanted to get play for your program? The one that got away. Who's the top one?
Oh, wow, that's a good one. Let me think about this one.
Because you're recruiting against some high level coaches in the DMV, and one of
Yeah.
them told me recently, man, you can't have everybody.
No, you can't. Um let me think about this one for a second. I'm gonna need a second for this one. You know who I thought was a lot of like just was obviously an outstanding player, Hunter Dickinson. Like I thought
That's who I had in my head.
yeah,
I
Hunter,
heard it
yeah,
came
just
down
because
to
of that
you two.
size, like yeah. Yeah, and he played with my guys already, like with all the takeover guys. Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. What team pushed you to grow the most as a coach? I think you might have addressed this one earlier, like your own team.
Yeah, so the Roosevelt team was certainly that team that went in 2002. The way we were able to come back on the backside of just having a crazy year of 10 and 12 during regular season, just anything that could go wrong went wrong. We all stayed together. That really challenged me. That really kind of pushed me for sure. At PVI, it was when I had a group of five guys that started together for 3 years together. They started over 90 games together when they were freshmen and sophomores. So Stan Robinson and Jamal Robinson as freshmen, Coleman Johnson, Tillman Dunbar, and Patrick Holloway as sophomores. That year was the building block of us blowing up into what we become. And so when they were freshmen, to try to push them forward, but also keep them together, and they stayed together and they were committed to rising up together. That was a challenging group from a standpoint of just like what they could be, and we all saw the results in it. So
What opposing coach did the best job opposite you?
Sean McAloon.
Hmm.
Sean was great when he was at St. John's and still is at IMG. I thought Sean really did a nice job. And then I always thought and complete respect for Mike Jones and what he did with those DeMatha teams. No matter what he had, he was always they were always kind of prepared and well coached. And again, when you manage that much talent too, you got to be able to find a way to make it all work. And I thought Mike obviously did a phenomenal job over all those years, and we were always been great friends. So those games were always fun to play.
What people and or experiences have had the greatest impact on your career and your coaching philosophy?
Hmm. Say it again.
What people and or experiences have had the greatest impact on your coaching philosophy and career?
For sure, my dad, Frank Farello. He really gave me my foundation of how to approach coaching, how to for sure the expectations on defense. I was always a joke. My father lived in Ohio. My mother and father would come down for playoffs, and we have a really high level, high percentage of winning in playoffs. And I always said, like, well, one of the reasons was my dad came down. I got to make sure our defense looks good because I don't need him criticizing our defense. And he leaves as soon as we're done, as soon as we lose. So if I want to see my dad and my mom long enough, like I need to keep winning.
You got to
Um,
earn it.
yeah, my dad certainly the foundation from how to approach coaching and I'd have conversations with him. Had long drives after my Roosevelt days, going home at night. I call him all the time, just talking basketball. His defensive principles and his defensive mindset was something that I've carried forward all these years. I've really enjoyed Dan Harwood as a friend and his offensive concepts from that standpoint at his time at Magruder. And he was always been very willing to share with me, and I think that was a huge impact on me. Scott McClary, who I think is one of the best high school coaches in the country, he was at colleges for a long time too. He's at Bethlehem Catholic now, but Scott McClary is a very good friend of mine, and he's someone that I've always had a lot of respect for, but just how he manages and handles situations and coaches, no matter what kind of team he has. I think Scott has been very influential and been a very good friend of mine, friend to me as far as helping me through a lot of different situations and how to look at and view things.
Give me a five-man team. You can get one sub if you want of opposing players that kept you up at night before a game.
Woo! Just are we talking conference?
Nah, just
Oh, just in general. I mean, yeah, just
any team you've played.
oh well, Ben Simmons. We had no answers for Ben Simmons. That's for sure. Um, these are going to be tough. Um, we played against so many high level. We played against Anthony Edwards. Fortunately, we escaped with a victory there. Um, Even this past year playing against Ace Bailey, beating them, we beat it in the semifinals in Bass Pro, and just his shot ability to make shots. So that was, he was always really scary to play. Um,
Got three so far.
yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm sure I'm gonna forget a bunch of
I
my.
feel like you got to think of some local guys now.
Yeah, there were a couple local guys. Chris Jenkins. I think Chris was he was just so hard to deal with, just scoring the ball. Like he was going to score the ball. Um, uh, Anthony Cowan, I thought just that specific team too for St. John's. He was kind of unguardable. You didn't know what to do with him.
And
And
who's a bench guy that messed you up?
what's that?
A bench guy that messed you up.
Oh, you mean someone that? Well,
Can't
I
be
was gonna
the
say
bench.
Chris Likes. I thought was always like someone that was just like unguardable. Like you're just hoping he might miss. Um, so, but yeah, that's
That's a good group, man. All right, so last question, Coach. And then I'm going to turn it to you for one at the end, real quick. What makes the DMV special?
the. I really think the families, the kids are so well schooled in how basketball is supposed to be played. I think that's the best talent in the country, but I think it's the mindset. I think you got tradition. I think you got competitors. I think you got like, layers of understanding about how each generation has to continue to make their own name in what they do. Being here since 1993, the amount of respect I have for just hearing stories about, those that have done things in the past. These kids are growing up in that. They're growing up with their families, their family members, their fathers, their uncles, their brothers that have accomplished so much. um, and so I think it's such a um, expectation that that these kids are further along development wise and understanding how to play the game the right way. And that's why we see so many kids go on to college and have success because they know how to play. They know how to play the game the right way. And of course, that also lends into, whether it be the WCAC, which I still consider the best conference in the country, and just the amount of coaches and the respect I have for all the coaches that are in our league. But that also, it covers the public and private in the DMV. Like there's some just wonderful coaches and programs that like play the game the right way, deliver the messaging the right way, care about their players the right way, and help them get there to where they need to. Because wow, like you look across the landscape of college basketball, and so many kids come from the DMV, and so there's a pride factor that is lost, I think, in a lot of different places. But we've always carried through. DMV still carries through that pride factor of who we are as a community. We root for each other when someone else is in a game. The amount of people I've heard, like when we've been in the national championship tournament the last couple of years, just like people excited for us that are even competitors of ours, but like they just see like, hey, this is great. This is great for us, and so the DMV is the best. I can go on. It could be a whole other podcast about watching the DMV and watching it grow and watching the players. And I go back to that family. I said to families because there's so many families that understand the game of basketball. I love meeting with families going, oh man, like, look, your mom and dad they know the game. They know what's going on. They have you on the right path. So we're happy to be part of your journey, but we're not the only part of your journey as far as like helping develop you. Like it's a village. We're all doing it together. And because you come from a family that understands the game, understands how hard it is, and how it is to be part of something bigger than yourself. And so I'm really excited about that. And we haven't seen that stop. That has still been true, whether it's 90s, the thousands, the tens, or the 20s.
I'm not from here either, but it's easy to feel like you're a part of the DMV after you've been here for a while. All right, really appreciate the time, Coach. Last part of it is I kick it back to you and see if you got a question for me.
Oh, how about this?
You
I'd
get
love
to
to
go
hear
next.
what some of your favorite players or teams were of PVI.
Interesting. I think just the dogs. I told someone the other day that dog Deshaun being Deshaun Harris Smith's ad on social media is pretty perfect. Because I remember watching him play with Jacoy and them on the eighth grade Made Hoops team that just dominated everybody. I'm like, Coach, is there any way that we can
Right.
him and Darren? I watched Darren play, and Coach was just like, Aaron, he lives up the street from PVI. Let it go. I'm like, Coach, are you sure? It's like, let it go. Him and I think just like how quick and how fast you guys play. Like I'm when I coach, if I ever get back into it, I like the same fast-paced style of play, swarming defense. Like I want to get it and go like right away. Like UNC, carry the ball out of the net, step out of bounds, inbound, and get going the other way. So and Smitty, I think it's so funny. You're gonna laugh because I'm sure you got the same question. I cannot tell you how many college coaches are like, what position does he play? And I'm
Right.
just like, fucking basketball player.
Yeah.
He's a hooper. He's someone that's gonna get it done at both ends of the floor. And just like the sheer will of it, I'm just like that goes back to my philosophy that we were talking about earlier. Just like he's gonna figure it out. Like, and I think it's interesting too. I'm spending more time trying to speak with the parents of players that I really like their game and see how much of it comes from them and see what things they say or don't say and like how they react to things that affects their son on and off the court. And sometimes it's just like, you can see where he gets it from sometimes if the kid is kind of an a-hole. If a kid's a problem child, so a lot of the time, especially in camp settings, when the parent comes to pick him up, I'm just like, that's where he gets that stubborn attitude from. But it's really good in a different sense as far as like the parents just getting to know like their rationale. Like I asked the parents of seniors, like, why did you choose PVI, St. John's, whatever the school is, to get their rationale of like what was the pitch that you got from each coach? And then also what did you think you needed from your son? How much did you care about the roster that was there at the time, and like how comfortable were you playing behind these guys or learning from these guys? And some parents are just like, we want to play right away, and some parents are like, I see the value in him getting his ass whooped in practice for 2 years until he is ready to play.
Right.
And just like the different approaches that coaches in the area take to throwing them into the fire and like the speed that they do that at and the way that they handle and manage players. It's all very interesting. And I tell people all the time, I'm very blessed to they talk about the DMV. I'm like, I live in College Park. I can drive an hour to PBI. I can drive 25 minutes to St. John's, Gonzaga, DeMatha, 10 minutes up the street, go up to Baltimore, MSJ, St. Francis, Spalding, like all these schools. And it's just like, we're so blessed. Like I looked at my top 10 for 2025. Every kid is either a high major recruit or is being recruited by Blue Bloods. It's just different out here, man.
It is.
So
It
really
is.
appreciate the time. And look forward to watching you guys play this season, coach.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate your coverage of all the things that go on with high school basketball because the positivity that we need in this world can be done through our sport, and you're a big part of that. So I want to thank you for how you cover the sport in such a positive way, and your evaluation skills are on point too, my man.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it, coach. All right, we'll see you in the gym soon.
You got it.